talking about earlier, just before the leader came to give his closing remarks to the day, I was talking about Michael Davis is going to be a freshman at Middletown High School, about 20 miles south of Newark, where 896 Route 896 intersects with I-95. The mentioning that the Michael has succeeded in life as an athlete in ways that a lot of people would think that could just never happen. He has a disease called cystic fibrosis and was diagnosed very early in his life. But it's a genetic disease, and I talked with him and his mom, Jennifer, about that disease and how it affects our bodies. And it's a disease that causes persistent lung infection, and according to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, the condition is caused apparently by a defective gene that causes a thick buildup of mucus in our lungs and in other organs. And that mucus can clog our airways and trap bacteria that leads to infection, can lead to extensive lung damage, and in worst cases to respiratory failure and then possibly, maybe even likely death. And this is a disease that 14-year-old Michael Davis lives with. And I heard, Mr. President, that for somebody who has cystic fibrosis to run any distance at all, I ran this morning, and I felt like I had some kind of disease. It was humid out there. I think it was probably higher levels of ozone than I like to run in. But for folks with cystic fibrosis like Michael, breathing is like they're breathing through a straw. Imagine that, trying to run 5K, 5 kilometers, or a half marathon, which is 13.1 miles, and to be able to breathe through a straw effectively and still run distances like that is truly, truly remarkable. But that's what he does. And earlier this year, he completed, as I said, the New York City half marathon. And one of the people who ran with him was my son, Christopher, who is a triathlete on his own right. He's 28 years old and a great runner. He also, like Michael, can run me into the ground. And I'm proud of them both. But Michael was diagnosed during a screening, I think just 3 weeks after he was born, 3 weeks old, and he was diagnosed with his disease. And his mom says that she was shocked to her knowledge. There weren't any members of her family on her side or the father's side who had cystic fibrosis, but this was a diagnosis made 3 weeks into Michael's life. Imagine that, 3 weeks. And after the diagnosis, his mom, Jennifer, faced some scary unknowns as she learned more about his condition, including average life expectancy for those who have cystic fibrosis. She immediately sought the care for Michael at the Children's Hospital that's up the road from us. I live in Wilmington, Delaware, but it's up the road about 25 miles north of Wilmington. And for the last 14 years, Michael has been treated at that hospital. And obviously, the fact that he can run a half marathon with cystic fibrosis suggests that he's getting exceptional care there. But Michael sees the doctor about every 8 weeks when he's feeling well. He sees the doctor more often when he's not feeling well, when he's feeling really sick. He wakes up every morning at 4:30. I get up around 5:30. He's already been up for an hour when I get up in Wilmington, Delaware. And he does it to use a high frequency, it's called a high frequency chest wall oscillation device. They call it the vest. And what it does is it helps break up the mucus in his lungs. And he continues to use the vest several times throughout the day. And he must also take over, are you ready for this? 40 medications every day. So that's his regimen. He gets up every day, 4:30, straps on the vest, uses it several times throughout the day, and his vest shakes up his lungs and the mucus there and so that he can live. And then he takes all his medications as well. He told me when I met with him and his mom a couple of weeks ago, he said that cystic fibrosis is very frustrating, but he copes by trying to lead a healthy lifestyle. And just last week, Michael received national attention when he was named the Boomer Esiason Co-Athlete of the Year. Boomer was a great football great, I think quarterback, if I'm not mistaken. I'm tempted to say with the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm looking for the pages to tell me whether I'm right or wrong, but I think I'm right. But the Boomer Esiason Co-Athlete of the Year is Delaware's own Michael. And we are very proud of Michael, very proud of Michael. The fact is access to these treatments and medication are really a matter of life and death for people with cystic fibrosis. If something should happen and Michael and his family would lose health care, and they would reach out and try to get coverage, before we had the Affordable Care Act, there's a pretty good likelihood that finding that coverage would be very difficult. And it would be difficult because he has cystic fibrosis. He is not an inexpensive young man to take care of. And to keep him alive and well and able to go to school and do the amazing regimen that he does takes money and resources, and medicine, and medical technology. The way healthcare used to be provided in this country, when somebody had a pre-existing condition like cystic fibrosis and they lost their health care, maybe a parent who was working had coverage and lost the health care, lost the job, the person, in this case Michael, would have been out of luck, because a lot of the health insurers used to say, well, we don't want to cover this person because it's going to cost us a boatload of money. And I know there are problems with the Affordable Care Act. There's things I'd like to change, and what I hope we'll do at the end of the day is not get rid of it, not just repeal it, but I hope we'll retain that which is good and to fix the things that ought to be fixed. And one of the things that needs to be retained is the idea that there should be a prohibition against insurance companies simply saying if somebody has a pre-existing condition and they lose coverage, they can't continue to be denied coverage. They can get the coverage that they need. And that's one of the very, very good things about the Affordable Care Act. The pages are new pages here, the first time in this year. You guys are about 2 years older, about 2 years older than Michael Davis. And hopefully you guys will live to be 100 or more. The only reason why he's alive today is because he has access to the kind of health care that we all want for our children and really for our parents. I'm a big believer, and our pages will hear me. I know they're only going to be here for 3 weeks, but they'll probably hear me when they come to the floor talk about the golden rule. And it's something that was impressed upon me at an early age, about the ages of all of you. And the golden rule goes something like this: treat other people the way we want to be treated. Pretty simple. I grew up in a Protestant church, but I don't care whether you're Protestant, Catholic, Jew. I don't care if you're Muslim. I don't care if you're Buddhist, Hindu, you name it. All of those religions, every one of them, has in their sacred scripture something like the golden rule: treat other people the way you want to be treated. And I think we try to do that in the Affordable Care Act, imperfect as it is. But I think one of the best examples of the golden rule in the legislation, in the law, is the idea that if somebody loses coverage and they have a pre-existing condition, we don't just cast them aside and say, well, that's too bad. We give them another shot to get the coverage they need. In the case of Michael Davis, the coverage, the health care, access to health care that keeps him alive. And not just alive to mope around and feel sorry for themselves, but to go out and run circles around the rest of us. He is an inspiration to me, and I think he's an inspiration to all who know him.